Welcome to the On a Mission Mojo podcast, where I have the pleasure of interviewing impact-driven founders, entrepreneurs, authors, and business experts who are actively working to create a positive difference in our world. I'm your host, Lori Young, a branding specialist, certified master marketer, and a passionate advocate for brands that possess heart, soul, and an unwavering commitment to drive change for humanity. It takes grit, a visionary mindset, and an abundance of mojo to navigate this journey. And the stories I share will undoubtedly ignite your passion. If you're seeking an infusion of inspiration, motivation, and valuable insights to amplify your impact, let's dive right in. Welcome to episode 24 of On a Mission Mojo podcast. We have Stephanie McPhail here with us today, and she is a toxic relationship recovery expert. So we will be diving into just how can we heal from toxic relationships, how can we avoid toxic relationships, and just anything related to that topic. So welcome, Stephanie, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your mission in the world.
Sure. So I specialize in toxic relationship recovery and really making sure that we don't repeat old patterns in new relationships. Okay. And the reason why I got into it is because I used to be really good at choosing really terrible people and then trying to make the relationship work. So I don't know if that resonates for anyone who's listening right now, but that was my thing for a long time. And I found, my first marriage, I felt like I was getting older, that time was passing me by, and I really wanted to settle down and have a family. And so I met someone who was kind of okay, like definitely was settling, but I felt like if I was going to get married, I was 28, felt like I was getting older. This was the time to do it. And I got married to someone that I saw red flags that I ignored. And we ended up getting married. And the day we got married, he actually got married at Oheka Castle in New York, which is a beautiful spot. Like stars get married here. Like should have been a dream wedding, which it was a beautiful day. But when we went up to the honeymoon suite, he actually had filled up the tub with water and overfilled it. And so when I went to go into the tub, he some water spilled out onto the marble floor, and he started yelling and screaming at me that I shouldn't have spilled water on the floor. And I said, sweetheart, just relax. It's okay. Let's not ruin the day. And again, he's the one who filled it up. But and I said, there's a drain in here. Obviously, it's not a big deal if there's water. Well, that was the wrong thing to say. He followed me around the honeymoon suite for about 3 or 4 hours while I was naked. I couldn't go anywhere. And he ended up strangling me. He threw me on the bed and started strangling me until I started to lose consciousness.
Oh, wow. So sorry.
Luckily, and it was embarrassing. I mean, luckily he stopped. You could tell if you've ever seen someone lose their temper. It's like the darkness went out of his eyes after he had gotten off of me, and I just curled up in a ball and thought, I just married this man who tried to kill me. Like, what am I going to do? And it was my minister that married us. My mom is from France, so I had family from Europe that had come. Like, it was a really big deal, and it was really, really embarrassing. So I wanted to believe him when he said it would never happen again. And so I stayed, and I stayed for 5 years trying to make it work. I did everything I could. I'd throw him out, let him back in. And, the abuse continued during that time. And I kept researching, trying to get information, and nothing I was doing was fixing it. And even our marriage therapist was like, I'm scared for your safety.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, and when you're in it though, you're like, well, what you just saw isn't even that bad. Like I'm dealing with so much worse. Right. You get into the survival place, and I tried so hard to make it work. And I finally did decide to get a divorce. I stayed with a friend of mine to be safe. And I got the divorce, thought everything was going to get better just because I'd gotten a divorce. And I said, I'll just never do that again. And that's what I had said in other relationships that were also unhealthy. And I realized after getting a DWI, I learned the hard way that if you are in your car, but your keys are in the ignition, that's still considered intent to drive. So I actually spent the night in jail and got a DWI. My grandmother passed away. I got a blood clot. I got pink eye. I mean, it was like everything that could go wrong I got ghosted by a guy that I'd been seeing. Everything was going wrong. I ended up in the emergency room and I sprained my ankle. And when I was in the emergency room, my ex-husband was called because he was on my emergency contact list. And the doctor comes in and says, you have a severely sprained ankle. Mm-hmm. And I look at him, I look at my ex-husband, and I'm thinking like, this just like, really, this has been just awful. Everything's awful. But I heard this voice clear as day that said, you need to be your own knight in shining armor and you need to save yourself. Because I'm realizing I was looking for someone to come and help me. And although I had been trying to do it on my own, I knew that I couldn't do what I'd been doing, which was trying to do it on my own. And so I got a team together to help me to heal. And then that's when my life started to change. And I went on this healing journey, rediscovered who I was, totally changed my life around. And now I get to be married to my best friend. I have 2 beautiful children, and we get to help other people heal so they don't get stuck in that same type of situation as well.
Oh, I love your story. I will be honest with you, I can completely 100% relate to it. Mm. I've been in the same situation myself, married to someone who had anger issues and lost his temper one evening with me. And it was super, super scary. And so I know I kind of went through that in my own self, my story is almost like identical to yours. Like in and out of, relationships that were just not healthy. And then finally it was like, okay, you yourself have to heal. There's a reason that you're picking these kind of individuals. And once you heal, of course, then you can then choose someone who is good for you. And thankfully today I am very happily married as well. So
wonderful, wonderful. It's really scary. When I started sharing my story, the first time I ever shared it, I had friends of mine that were crying, listening, because I hadn't told them. They didn't know how bad things were. Right. And, so it's scary. It's uncomfortable to share it. It's embarrassing. There's a lot of, just stress and overwhelm of experiencing it. And then a lot of shame in sharing what you experience. But once I started sharing, I realized how common it was. It really is, and I was a professional woman. I was successful. I made good money. I was the one who made the money in the relationship. And, how many other successful women like us, it sounds like, that have been in that and also been stuck in that shame and guilt cycle and, not getting the right type of help because we tend to be hyper independent where I'm going to figure it out on my own. I don't need anybody, I'm going to do the research, and we get stuck there instead of asking for help when we really should or leaving when we should.
Yeah. And I think what comes with that too is kind of like you said, we are successful, independent women, and it can be embarrassing to tell people, right, that you are dealing with this, right? To me, it's like, okay, this is not smart. I know it's not smart. And I don't want people to think that I'm not smart, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's kind of a tough situation to be in. And in my case, I had a son, by this man, and I was wrestling with keeping his dad, in the relationship and him around his dad, but knowing for me, it was so unhealthy. And not only was it unhealthy for me, but it was unhealthy for my son.
Yes, yes. It's amazing how many people, I was lucky enough not to have children with my first husband, but, to think the amount of people that I've worked with now that stayed for the children. And, they've said to me, well, I protected them, they don't know what's going on. And I will tell you now that I have worked with literally entire families, except for the abusive person, but I've worked with entire families. So I will tell you that no matter how much you think you're protecting them or how much you think that staying married is better for the children, the answer to that is you're not, and it's not healthy for the children. It is better for you to leave that. And even if, whatever stuff's going to happen during the divorce, how difficult it's going to be, even if you're not even sure how you're going to pay the bills, you will figure it out. Because I actually did a poll in my Facebook group, and I said, do you wish you would have left sooner or later in the whole process? And every single person said sooner. And they all said all of those fears that I had about leaving were not as bad and didn't have the effects or had the effects on my children that I didn't even think of. It was all the wrong reasons to stay, all the fear that kept them stuck. and actually caused more problems for them had they not left earlier.
Right. So let's talk, I guess, a little bit about the red flags, or maybe even the yellow flags, that show up for us as women, or even as men, because there's toxic women as well, right? What are those yellow flags or those red flags that are showing up in the dating phase that people need to be aware of?
So one of the things that I had told, and I had not done the healing that I was supposed to do. So I had already experienced an unhealthy relationship. And then when I got into this relationship, one of the first things I said was, I really don't want to live together, if we're going to get married, because he was right away trying to push marriage. So that's one thing, if they're really trying to move quickly. And so I said, I don't really know if I want to live together. And he was like, well, I don't understand why you wouldn't. We should live together. And it was like this pushing, forcing, controlling. He wanted to move in, and I was ridiculous for not wanting him to move in. So I finally gave in, because I was like, well, he's right. I'm just being, and he used my previous relationship. Like, you just don't know healthy relationships. I'm going to help you. So like I would bring stuff up and he'd be like, see, that's you not knowing what a healthy relationship is again. And I'd be like, well, okay, he's right. I guess I don't know. But he was manipulating me because I didn't know. And again, why it's so important to heal between relationships. But so yeah, pushing you to do things you don't want to do, forcing their feelings on them. I just did an interview for my podcast yesterday, and I was speaking with a financial advisor, and he was talking about how important it was to have a prenup. And that was actually something I had brought up to my first husband, is like, I think we should have a prenup. You would have thought I murdered someone. I mean, he cursed me out, yelled and screamed, and then see his thing, it would be from like one or the other. He would either threaten, curse, and be physically violent, and or then not talk to me. So we had that fight, and then he didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. So I'd be going home to him ignoring me and just not talking to me at all. So 2 weeks didn't talk to me. And then finally I was like, okay, I guess I'm being ridiculous asking for a prenup. Let me not do that anymore. So it was like all of this coercion, the manipulation, all of those things. And, some of those smaller things I noticed. I remember my mom saying, if the animals don't like them, or they don't like animals, that's not a good sign. Now, he did love animals, but it was really funny because I brought him to my sister's house, and she had at the time a big Rottweiler, 150-pound Rottweiler. And whenever he'd go to the house, this Rottweiler would follow him around and stare at him, and would never let his back be to my ex, and would growl at him. Wow. And so actually when I met my now husband, I'm like, well, just so you know, the Rottweiler didn't like the ex. And it was almost like, like we had trained this dog, where my now husband comes in, and the dog went running to him as if it was like an old long lost friend, and it was following around because he wanted to be pet, was like in his lap being cuddled. And I was like, okay, you won just for the fact that the dog likes you, because that was a big warning sign for me.
Absolutely. Dogs can sense energy, right? They know if someone is good or not. So yeah.
And I think that too, also, how do they talk about their exes? How do they talk about their family? How do they deal with road rage? Those are all kinds of things too. And I think, and really all of those things go back to when you bring it up or talk about it, how do they make you feel when you bring up an issue? Are they willing to talk about it and figure it out, or are they trying to put you down and make you feel bad?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it can be easy, I know, to blame the abusive person or the toxic person in a relationship. But if we're honest, we are the ones that make that choice, right? We sometimes unknowingly, right? Just based on where we are at in our own personal growth. But what are some of the things that we as individuals need to work on to heal so that we're not attracting those toxic relationships?
So I think I'm going to back up. I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to back up to it for a second, because there's something that I've noticed when we are in it. So my book, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, is really about, it's all about my story, but it's also about learning why is it that we are attracted to these types of people. And that's what it is. Again, until we heal, we will keep attracting these types of toxic people. And like the example I give is, if we are needy, I need a relationship. I'm not good enough if I'm not in a relationship. Like those kind of neediness or trying to prove or show someone, we're going to attract narcissists, because narcissists love needy people. They want to be the savior. They want to show off. They want, their ego needs stroking. So they need someone that needs them. And that's a typical thing. So until you become someone who's not needy, then you're going to keep attracting those types of people. So there's phases when it comes to unhealthy relationships that I think are important too. And then we can talk about how the healing process really works. So the first thing I would say is, most of us, when we're in that relationship, we're going to recognize that there's an issue. And we might recognize it as in, like, something's not right. Like something feels off. My gut's telling me something is wrong. Right. And then the next place we go to is we go into research mode. We're smart professional women. We've got advanced degrees. Right. So because of that, what do we do automatically? Let me find out information. So we overload ourselves with information, and we get all this information. And what a lot of us do is then we go to that significant other and we're like, look at this information that I learned. We can fix this and make it better. And the other person is like, yeah, it's all your fault. Right. And we're like, no, it's not our fault. I mean, we're sticking around, so, we'll get there, but yeah. So, right. We get into that, into that place where we are researching all the information. We might continue that research even after we've ended the relationship. We're still just trying to wrap our heads about it, which is why the number one search word is narcissist and narcissism. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's so overly searched. And of course, people I talk to, they're like, everyone's ex is a narcissist. I'm not denying that that's a possibility, because most people have at least narcissistic qualities. Sure. But again, what are we doing to get into that relationship? So again, we research the information. The next part is the addiction phase. So whether we're still in it or we've left it, but there's still that addiction. It's replaying over and over again, making excuses to try to fix it, to try to see them, to try to prove to them that we are worthy. And we keep going back. So that ex might have been addicted to drugs or alcohol or gambling or, sex or whatever. And we're addicted to them. We're addicted to the little breadcrumbs that we get when we feel good, when they give us those little bits of attention. And so that addiction keeps us stuck. And again, because we get that little bit and we're like, oh, good, it's something. And even when it's bad, it's still good because they're showing us attention. Sure. Mm-hmm. So we get stuck into that addiction cycle. And then the next one is acceptance. Is like, okay, this really is bad. Things are terrible. I knew what I was talking about. I'm accepting it. But then this is the part that I think is so important. This starts to get us out of that research phase. And when we get into the acceptance phase, that's when we say, I can't do this on my own. I need to get a professional. Because we can't read the label from inside the bottle. So some people don't get help and it takes them a few years, or they're lucky and they fall into a relationship with someone who's great. Those are very lucky people. That's not the commonplace from what I see. Mm-hmm. What happens most of the time is for the people who do get the expertise, because they can't read the label from inside the bottle. They're not seeing the mistakes that they're making. They need someone who's on the other side to look in and say, hey, see, don't do that anymore. Instead of going this way, think about it from this perspective. And it kind of just guides you so that you don't fall into old patterns, because we live in subconscious. Yes. So our programming will keep us automatically going to these toxic people. So if your home, where your heart is, what you're used to love being, is stress provoking, anxiety, proving yourself, drama, all this back and forth, then we're naturally going to go there. That is like the rut when you're on the highway and you're like, oh, I keep getting into this rut. Right. That's what happens when we're used to that cycle of toxic relationships. If we're trying to do something different, it's going to feel weird. It's not natural to us. Our brain automatically wants to take us to what we know, which is what's gotten us to this point. So we need to have someone else to guide us into a different direction so that we can choose differently for ourselves.
Absolutely. That is so true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what you were saying. Like, it feels weird. I think we need someone to actually say, this person is doing X, or this person is, saying X. Is this normal? Is this something I should be concerned about? And get making sure that that expert is healthy themselves, right? And I think it can be a
100%.
therapist. I think it can be someone who's just a healthy individual that can mirror back for you that, yes, that's normal, or no, that's not. That's something that you should be concerned with. One of the things that I think I've seen, and I've talked to other people about this, is oftentimes when we have this tendency to attract toxic relationships, and then we say, I want somebody healthy, right? Inevitably what happens is we meet someone that might be healthy and we're not attracted to them.
100%. Because we haven't done the work.
Right.
So here's the thing. So what you said before, like therapy, I think is great for looking backwards, and it's part of your team. That's actually one of the healing aspects that we look at. We teach clients is making sure that you create your team. Having a therapist is an amazing part of your team. Having healthy people in your life is an amazing part of your team. Most people don't. They think they have great friends and family, but those friends might not always make the best decisions or know the right information with relationships. Having a coach who's been where you are and is where you want to be, because that's an important piece too, that can help lead you, because a coach is specifically meant to guide and give you direction. Right. A therapist is more meant to help you kind of figure it out on your own. And at some point, we grow past that. And now we need to know, I need a new goal and I need someone to help me to get there. Because I will tell you that my now husband would not have been the one I would have chosen before I did the work. He is sweet. He is caring. He is understanding. He is a lot of things that would not have been fun when I was not choosing the best partners.
Right. Exactly.
And so you have to do that work. And again, you have to, because the people that I started to become attracted to, and and not even just attracted to, for a little while, I was like, oh, there's no good guys out there. Why is it that every time I meet someone, they've got all these issues, they've got all these things? And so you've got to really change your frequency. And you change your frequency. It's like, I joke around, you got to let your weirdo flag fly, or let that light shine bright, whatever that is, whatever that light is shining out. But if we are in a chameleon phase and we're trying to make everybody else happy, we're not shining that light to let people know who we really are. Right. And we're trying to people please so much. All we're doing is trying to make everyone else happy. So when we get really comfortable with who we are, which is part of the healing process too, is who are we? What do we need? What do we want for ourselves? What do we really want in our life? And then that's where I recommend, once you get to that point where you feel really comfortable with who you are, we go through the educational dating phase, because a lot of us are really used to being in monogamous long-term relationships. So learning how to date feels a little weird for us. But the educational phase is about going on a bunch of dates and seeing, what do I actually like? Right. So we can start kind of creating this list of because we might say to ourselves, okay, I want someone who's a Christian, but then you go on Christian dating sites and you're like, whoa, not that kind. I mean this kind. Or I wanted someone who was interested in being an entrepreneur, but I met an amazing guy who was working like 16 hours a day. And I was like, whoa, I don't want that either. Right. So you have to get really clear for yourself what's going to work well for you, and get out of the, let me prove myself to them, and instead let them show me who they are and let me decide if this is someone that I want to be in a relationship with. So when you're doing that and you're learning about not only who you are, but what would work well with you, then it's going to be easier for you to find the right fit for yourself.
Right. And I think in order to do that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in order to do that, we need to be so comfortable dating ourselves and 100%. Being okay with being alone, so that we don't need somebody in our life. We are perfectly fine and happy dating ourselves, hanging out with friends, engaging in whatever hobbies we have, so that when that wrong person shows up, we can say, no, thank you, and easily walk away. When we're in that, like you said, that needy phase of I need a relationship in my life, we see the red flags, but then just let them go.
Well, somebody had asked me once, they're like, are you a dating coach? And I was like, oh, absolutely not. I mean, we do help people date, but I wouldn't call myself a dating coach. I help people make sure they don't make the same mistakes again. Mm-hmm. And so, and how do they do that is you've got to get really comfortable being by yourself. And so for me, I actually got to a point where, I mean, for a little while in my life, I thought that there was something wrong with me if I wasn't in a relationship. I think society, I think movies, I think music, all of those things that we're told is that if you're a woman over a certain age, there's something wrong with you if you're not married. Mm-hmm. And so, and then to be divorced, like, oh my gosh, what did I do to be the divorced person? So there's all those different thoughts that come up. But I also wanted a family. So when I got a divorce at 34, first of all, I thought I was old, which just still cracks me up. But I was like, I have to get to a point where I am comfortable, and I mourned the fact that I might never have children, that I might never find that healthy relationship. But I got to a point where I knew that I would never settle again. And so I had to really completely let go of whatever it was that was going on, let go of control, because I didn't mean to be controlling, but I was trying so hard to be without realizing it. And once I let that go and just allowed dating to be just like fun and natural, and made plenty of fun, parties and adventures with my friends, and traveled cross country by myself, and really did all the things I'd ever wanted to do, I met this really amazing man, and I actually almost broke up with him 3 separate times, not because he wasn't amazing and wonderful, but because he was what I was looking for, and I wasn't sure I wanted to, quote unquote, settle down. But the cool thing was that because I was so comfortable being single, I was not worried about being real, like really real, and telling him everything. And if he didn't like it, he knew where the door was. And so because of me being really open, really honest, just being myself completely, he showed me that he wanted to be my best friend, and he was not going to take away from my life as I had experienced before. Right. And so because of that, we became best friends. And then when I finally said, all right, fine, I'll date you exclusively. Let's see what happens. And then we've been married ever since. It's been 8.5 years already. We were just saying the other day, like, what a different experience it is being married to someone that you're happy with. It doesn't mean every day is perfect. We're parents, we're business owners, and just life. But, to have your partner in all of this together is and your best friend feels very different than when you're forcing and struggling with someone every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So maybe this is not your expertise, but I feel like it's related, and I feel like it's something that a lot of people deal with. So toxic relationships show up in so many different ways, not just in our marital partner or our dating partner. It can show up in our family. It can show up in our friends. It can show up in work situations. Like, how do you help people, or how do you recommend people deal with toxic relationships in their lives if it's related to family or work? Friends, obviously you can get rid of. Family, it's harder to get rid of toxic relationships. Work, sometimes we need that job, right? So what do we do in those situations?
Well, I mean, one of the things, I had a client of mine that she came to, most people will come to us, the entry point is the toxic romantic relationships. And then they start working through it, and they're like, it's the friends, it's the family, it's the work, it's all those things. I had a client of mine that came in, she was dealing with some addiction to her ex, basically, and she would do drive-bys, and she was all the reasons why she was still trying to get this relationship to work. When we finally got her to drop that addiction and to really focus on herself, she started making these major shifts, and one of them was, oh my gosh, I've been working at this company for 16 years, and I think they're gaslighting me. I think that I could make more money. So when you find your voice and you realize what you're worth, she said, I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to just start putting it out there. I'm going to just start seeing what's available to her. Within about a month or so, she had gotten a job offer in San Diego. Now, she lived in Virginia at the time. In San Diego, they offered to move her for free and to pay her 3 times the amount of money that she was making. 3 times the amount. So you're talking, I think now she's making $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
Wow.
So, and all that was just her using her voice. She hadn't changed. Right. But the thing is too, is that when you're dealing with unhealthy, home life, we don't even realize how much energy is being siphoned off before we even get to use it, and how much we've learned to not use our voice. So like we had another client of ours, she was a nurse, and same kind of thing, unhealthy work environment. She started to learn how to use her voice, and she was able to get a job in, like, still in that healthcare system, but under different bosses, and then and made more money. So like same kind of thing, more money, so better bosses. So you're not afraid to use your voice, but you're not gonna be afraid to start looking, because it's not like I'm not gonna get anything better. There's nothing possible for me. I'll say too, for toxic family members, most of us learned the toxic behaviors from our toxic family members, and a lot of our clients, whether it's mom or dad or lack thereof, those are a really big piece. And I really find it's been really interesting to see the moms and daughters, what the effect is there, like what those relationships are like, how strained they are so often. But I think there is a lot to be said about both sides learning about or relearning what it's like now that you are an adult, how to speak differently to your parents and your parent to you as an adult. And so, there has to be, I'll say this, is that my mom was the difficult one. I have some of my best lessons are from my mom. And, I just remember I had never heard of a boundary till I was 34. I didn't know that was possible. The first time I ever heard an apology ever was when I was, I think, 37 years old. Wow. And because I had stood my ground, she was fighting with some family members, and she always tried to bring everybody into the whole drama of it. And I absolutely refused to go into it, so she wouldn't talk to me. And I started dating my husband, and I said, I need to figure this out with my mom, because I want you to meet my family, and I don't want it to be weird with my mom. So I messaged her, and it's just in text message or email, I don't remember. But I said, these are the things that bother me. These are the things that I'm not putting up with anymore. And that was when she actually said she apologized. And so I screenshotted it. Now, that's not going to happen for everybody, but I sent it to my younger sisters. We literally, all 3 of us cried, because we had never seen it in print or heard it with our ears, her saying she was sorry. So, that was an amazing thing. But since then, I've listened. Like, she's not going to change. She's who she is. And I can be thankful for what I've learned and who I am, not despite of, but because of. I'm more empathetic, I'm more caring, I'm more understanding because of my experience with that. I'm not going to change her. I can take her for what she is, and just know that she's going to talk and not really care about what I'm doing, and she's going to badmouth whomever, and when it gets too much, I'm going to end the conversation or walk away, because we don't live close. But that's going to be how that relationship is. I can't try to force her and make her into something that she's not. Right. There might be people that say, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to try to have a relationship. And that's fine if that's what you need. Sometimes it's a for now. Sometimes it's not a forever. As you do your own healing, sometimes we need to take that separation. But that was a really important piece for me. And even just understanding, like, I had always felt that something had happened with her, like she'd been sexually assaulted or something. And the last time I saw her, I asked her about it, and there was some assaults, there was some physical abuse that she had dealt with. But in that day and age, you didn't deal with it like you do now. No. So it doesn't make what she did okay to us, but it made me understand her a little bit better. She was a trauma-filled person that never got the help that she needed. And it's just a reiteration of how important it is for me to keep working on myself and keep helping other people, so that we don't pass that on to the next generation, and keep that going.
Absolutely. So talk to me, I guess, a little bit about how do you work with clients? So if anyone's listening and they're like, yeah, I have some toxic relationships that are bringing me down, what is the container in which they work with you? How does that work?
So we work with everybody online. And when I say we, my husband and I work together. We have a team approach. And, I always say it's kind of nice, I think, for clients to see that there is a male that is safe.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You know, and to have that husband and wife team is to just see a healthy dynamic going on.
Mm-hmm.
He's more a bit the spiritual side, so he uses something called Psych K. He's also a Reiki master teacher and a trained trainer, so all these really great qualities. But the Psych K really helps with that subconscious that I'm talking about.
Got it.
So whether the subconscious is related to your unhealthy relationships, weight loss, people pleasing, you know, imposter syndrome, whatever those things are that's keeping you from stepping into your full power, what David does with a Psych K session is he does something called a balance. And in that balance, it's like taking months or years worth of positive affirmations and putting it into one session. So it's so cool because, you know, you have someone that comes in that hasn't slept in years, like through the night because of trauma and stress. And now all of a sudden they're sleeping 8 hours a night, no problem.
Oh, wow.
People that we had an alcoholic stop drinking. It's been 3 years. I think last week it was 3 years. I mean, these things, and it's all that subconscious stuff that we don't realize that's affecting our conscious world.
Right.
So David does that part. And then I really work with clients on looking at their patterns. Like that is my forte. I love it. When we do deep dives, because we do deep dives, we do group coaching programs. But even in our group coaching, we do one-on-one individual stuff. And I love sitting down with clients and looking at, like, let's look at your life story. And let's look at where you've repeated these same patterns over and over again in relationships. And let's connect those dots so that you're at least aware where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. And now you can choose something different. So we want to make the subconscious into consciousness. We want you to have awareness, because once you have awareness, you can make a different choice. So and then feel empowered to make that different choice, right? Because their self-esteem is really cut down in all of this too. So we come from a really holistic perspective. Mm-hmm. So my background in health and education, we make sure that people are looking at their physical health. So exercise, nutrition, you know, water consumption, sleep, all that kind of stuff. Look at their social health. What are your activities outside of the relationship, outside of your family dynamics, work, whatever it is. Your physical health, like I said before, so your exercise and what you're eating and stuff like that. I said that right. Mental, emotional health. You know, how are we talking about things? How are we communicating? And then the spiritual side. So the spiritual side doesn't have to be religious. We would consider ourselves spiritual, so you can call it the universe, higher self, whatever it is you want to call it, but that connection to more than yourself. And so we got to get all that back into balance so that we can start looking at what it is that we need to create something better for ourselves and come from a place where it doesn't feel like we're fighting against the tide, but instead we're able to go with where our soul is really bringing us to go to.
Right. Awesome. That is fantastic. I will definitely put your website in the show notes. We have a few minutes left. So I wanted to know, like, if you'd be willing to share, like, you are a business owner yourself, right? You and your husband obviously have a business together. Talk to me a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you've faced as a business owner?
Well, to me, this is really funny. So I was an educator for 18 years. So I taught K through 12. I've now taught as young as 10 to as old as 81, you know, so I've done the gamut. But when I first started my business, I just thought that I was going to just tell people, like, hey, I'm open for business, and clients were just going to come in droves. Like,
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be nice? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm here to help. Everyone good, everyone that needs me is just going to find me miraculously. And I very quickly understood that was not the case. So I think, and this, when I was becoming a teacher, everybody else was worried about speaking in front of a classroom. And I was like, I've been public speaking forever already. I'm worried about lesson plans. Mm-hmm. So it was like the same thing with business. It was like, I had no problem helping people heal. Right. It was business and marketing that what I had to learn. So, those were the things that were really, really difficult for me. And I mean, we're still learning. Like, you think you get it, and then algorithms change and the right platforms change. And so you got to be ready to pivot. You've got to, I mean, for us, I will say COVID was really helpful for us. Okay. In that people were stuck with their significant others, or they divorce, and they were like, oh my God, this is awful.
Right.
And so they came to us looking for help. And then when people started going back to work and the world started to go back to the new normal, all of a sudden it was like, let's shift again. Now business is different. Facebook is not what it used to be. Now we've got to start looking at other platforms or change the way that we have our messaging and marketing in Facebook. So I would say that for me, the biggest thing is just learning how to pivot, learning how to listen to your audience.
Yes.
And same thing that I would say to any of the people that need help with toxic relationships. I'm not an expert in business and marketing. So what do? I hire experts. Sure. I have people, I have my TikTok expert. I'm actually going to be talking to her right after I'm done with this. I mean, I have my people, I have my team to help me in the areas that I'm not good at. And being really honest with yourself, like, what are the areas you're not good at? Be honest with yourself. Get help in those areas, because you might finally figure it out, but it might take a lot of time. When I was pregnant with my second daughter, or my second child, who's my daughter, I was writing a book, working full time, and creating my program. So I was just in creation mode. And I was like, how am I going to do all this stuff? And my husband wasn't working with me yet.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'm going to hire a VA. And I hired a VA because all of the creating the, whatever social media posts and things like that, it would take her 5 minutes and take me an hour and a half to edit. Right. So it was like, I can pay someone to do that because I have a limited amount of time with all the balls in the air that I was doing. I can pay her, hire her. It's easy for her. It's not it wasn't that much money comparatively. And then it opens me up to take clients and do the other things. And so that got me kind of in the used to hire out when you can, get the experts on your team so that you can use their knowledge to move you more quickly through the process. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because none of us are going to be experts at everything, especially not right away.
Definitely not. I mean, I always say, stay in your zone of genius. And your zone of genius is in serving your clients and helping people heal from toxic relationships. And the more you can stay in that zone, while others, like you said, your social media person can stay in her zone of genius, the better it is.
100%. So don't be afraid to hire help, because it actually ends up being cheaper for you to hire help and expertise than it is for you trying to figure it out, wasting time, and then also wasting money. Because if you're putting money into ads or whatever, and it's not getting the right audience, now you got a whole bunch of people that aren't your ideal clients that are following you that are not even ever going to buy from you. So you really have to make sure that you're getting the right help.
Yeah. So there's 100 million, maybe not 100 million, but a lot of ways to get visibility for your business. What are some of the ways that have worked the best for you?
I kind of feel like, so for us for a long time, it was Facebook. That was our go-to, definitely. Okay. My podcast is a really great way. Being on other people's podcasts is another really great way. TikTok right now is hot. That is definitely a place to be seen. And
so
then
you do little videos. I have never, ever been on TikTok. So I'm just curious. You just do little relationship tip videos, or what do you do on TikTok?
You can do little relationship tip videos. You can take, for you would take this podcast, take little bits of the conversation, take a minute up to 3 minutes, and give it a cool title, slap it in TikTok, and make sure that you research the good hashtags, which is why having expertise is helpful. But you put it on there, then people get to know you that way as well. So TikTok is really a great way. We're actually working right now, and hopefully I can get this to you before this airs, or after. But we have being able to have different price points. So that's something too. I mean, we do have group coaching, which would be a little bit of a higher offer, but we also have things like my book and my workbook, which are other great ways for people to get to know you. It levels up your expertise. It gives people something that they can put into action now that doesn't cost a lot of money. So that's a really great thing. Our Facebook group, like I said, used to be booming. It's a little bit quieter now, but that's been in the past has been a great way. And then honestly too, I've been lucky enough to I've been on Fox News. I've been on like large media organizations because I've grown my expertise so much.
Sure.
That people hear me, they research, my name pops up now because of the experience. And then that just keeps adding to your expertise and your fan base realistically too.
Awesome. And I think, for you, it's great because you've kind of like coined yourself the toxic relationship recovery expert. And so anyone that's is in a toxic relationship, it's kind of like, okay, this person has got to get me because they're a toxic relationship recovery expert, right? Yeah. So that's one of the things I always talk about too, is just specialize, niche down and specialize, because you could help any kind of relationship, right? But you specialize in a certain type of relationship, which I think is
professional women who have been, and that's actually something that's really interesting. Like when I hear someone say they're a life coach, I'm like, I got to pick something, because what do they say? It's like, you can't be, if you're a shark and you're in blood infested waters, so it's like everyone's in there cutthroat trying to feed, you're not going to get anything, but you got to get to that blue ocean. So how many toxic relationship experts are there? You might have heard of relationship experts, you might have heard divorce, whatever, but it's more niche. There's much less comparison, and you don't have to deal with as many people. So it just makes it a little bit easier for people to understand what it is that you do. So get clear on what that is. And I'll tell you, what I call myself now versus what I've called myself over the past 10 years has metamorphosized as I've gotten to know more and more my avatar.
Yes. And like you said, your ability to pivot. You have to be, like you said, get to know your audience and be willing to pivot. So I want to close with asking, and you may have shared a little bit about this already, but what do you feel is like your mojo, or that magical superpower that you bring to the world?
Well, I think once I did the healing, it really became, I heard someone say once that Martin Luther King didn't have a dream, the dream had him. And, it makes me teary always thinking about it, but I've taken what I've experienced and I can use that to help other people. That pain can help other people. And so when I got out of it, and I was like, seriously, I always have the vision of like, it's like I was wearing these glasses that were gray when I was in survival mode, and the world was more difficult and stressful and overwhelming. And when I started to heal, it's like I had gotten a new pair that were pink and colorful and beautiful. And I was like, I remember looking around, and I swear I was like, I've been missing so much. I've been missing the world. I've been missing my life. I've been missing the person who was excited about living. That person was lost. And to know that if I felt that way, how many other people felt that way. And it became my mission to start shouting it from the rooftops, like, you don't have to live this way anymore. You can create something different. And so like my husband and I, we always say like what makes us the happiest is when that client gets the breakthrough. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, like I slept the night, or I stopped drinking, or I got that better job, or I met one of our clients who just got married. Like all these great, wonderful things happen. That's what we live for. So to have that kind of passion, and we get paid for it, but I love what I do. I love that I get to have this experience. I don't live in that past anymore. It's like a whole lifetime ago, but because of it, I can use that to help so many other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love your kind of like you're saying, I think it's maybe your book, but love shouldn't hurt. Right. And I just feel like you embody that.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here. And it was great. I hope that listeners that are dealing with toxic relationships learn something. This was a lot of valuable information. You've got a wonderful resource, a wonderful person here that you can put on your team. And I hope that you will reach out.
Thank you, everybody.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for tuning in to the On a Mission Mojo podcast. Ready to dive into more incredible stories of people on a mission? Next week, I'll return with a fresh episode to ignite your passion for creating a better world. If you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a glowing review, and spread the word to all your friends. Head over to onamissionbrands.com for more great episodes. Remember, the world needs your mojo, so go out there and let your brilliance shine.